Hey everyone, welcome to a new video. In this video, I'm going to do a quick overview of some of the new Unreal 5.6 templates. I'm working on some video ideas at the moment, but just before I do, I thought it'd be a good idea to do a quick overview of just a few of the things that have sort of been released, mainly on the shooter project, because that's the one that I've focused on first. But really, just to spread awareness of the existence of these projects and that a lot of things that people needed to add to some of the other templates, or a lot of the stuff that you have to start with in a shooting game, for this template, for example, um, has been added to these templates. So I've asked a few people, and a handful of you haven't used 5.6 yet, which is absolutely fine. There's absolutely no need to upgrade if the previous version does exactly what you need. But some people are not aware of the new templates, which, like I said, have a lot of this sort of starting stuff already baked in now. And I just want to cover a few bits and pieces. Now, before I do what I'm going to do, I'm going to just launch another 5.6 in the background, just because I will go through some of the templates that are available. But whilst that loads up, I'll just explain. So, this is the first person arena shooter template. Now, this is the one that I use as the first person shooter template going forward, and you can see that it's a lot busier. Now, straight off the bat, what I will explain is they are a little bit different when you load into. Let's just cancel that. When you load into the first person, you now get this new little arena thing. But nothing actually happens on this one. You're just in a first person view, which is absolutely fine. They've sort of revised how the first person works as well. It's not just a set of arms anymore. You've actually got a body, which is nice. And I'll show you something funny in just a minute, of what they've had to do to make that. They've kind of deformed the UE4, UE4, bit outdated, the Unreal mannequin, and it looks kind of funny. But anyway, yeah. So you get this sort of first-person screen now. There's a first-person template which is pretty much this, but then they've added what are called variants now. So there's a first-person shooter variant and a first-person horror, and some other modes. So what you'd need to do is when you load in, you'll think, oh, where's the shooter gone? You'll see that there's now a folder called variant shooter, and you come into the arena shooter, and you get this, and you can see there's a lot of new sparkly things. So we've got little jump pads which give you a bit of a boost up. There's some testing dummies, some I was going to call them AI then, but they just stand there and get shot, to be honest. There's spawns for weapons which don't actually appear right in the editor, but we'll just jump straight in. So they've already give you a crosshair, which is good. That was always missing on the previous one. So you've got a crosshair. There's some sort of like stats up at the top. It's sort of like a team-based thing is the idea. Obviously, I've looked into the code a little bit, and it seems like there's a team state. So we've got this weapon spawner, if you will. So this one's a pistol, and when you grab the pistol, you get a bit more feedback now. You get a bit more UI. You've got an ammo counter in the bottom left. Obviously, we've got a new pistol, which is nice. So there's a couple of extra models, and as you move around, you'll notice that, well, whoa, hang on, when I bump into a wall, the gun actually reacts and sort of like gets out of the way. Like, you can get closer to the wall because, we're moving that gun away. The gun's not poking through the wall, which is a common um, sort of issue with FPS games, that you can walk up to a wall and the gun seemingly just pokes through the wall. Um, or you can get closer to the wall than there's actually physical space to do that. Anyway, so we've got this new weapon. We've also got new bullets, which are kind of like Nerf darts, but they're kind of like suction Nerf darts. As you can see, after a few minutes or a few seconds, not minutes, a few seconds, that they fall off. So the good thing is that they sort of stick to the normal angle. So whatever angle thing you shoot is, it sort of correlates to that angle, and then after a few seconds, the suction, let's say, wears off and they fall off. This doesn't actually apply to physics bodies, so other characters and these kind of like shooting jiggly target men, it doesn't apply to those. Anything that's physics, it's kind of just it applies an impulse and then jiggles off, just falls off. Um, so you can see the original FP gun up there. I call it FP gun. That's what it was named. But the original Unreal gun, which was like the um, grenade launcher kind of style gun. We've also got another new weapon, a rifle. So this is pretty neat. Obviously, this is fully automatic, and you can see the UI, although it's on a yellow background. You can see the ammo counter in the bottom left there, updated, and then this auto reloads, it wraps around. But you can also see, as I'm holding the weapon, they've added recoil as a default. So if you keep shooting, the recoil is just going to keep pushing you up the screen. So that's actually really nice. There's a minor bit of movement when you get close to a wall with a rifle. Um, it's not as aggressive as the pistol. It doesn't quite move the gun fully out of the way, but there is a bit of movement out of the way, which is nice. There is a button to change weapon, but I can't remember. There we go. So it's shift. So you can change weapons with shift, and the UI and obviously the gun changes. Not quite an animation for sliding the gun out of the way, but what we've got so far is fine. We've got a sort of door which detects your presence and then opens, closes behind you. So there's it doesn't seem like a lot, but on the face of it, you've got so much stuff to break down here and go through. So the animations, the moving, the bullets, how the UI updates, these little pods which sort of give you different weapons. Obviously, if you've already got the weapon, it's not going to give you a second one, but effectively, you could possibly manipulate this to top up your ammo. So these are some things that I'm going to consider working on. Just adding things onto this, or breaking down some of the new things that they've added to it. Really, that's kind of up to you. I'm going to go where I go naturally. But if there's anything that you specifically want to see, please leave a comment down below and let me know, and I'll try and break some of this stuff down. Or, if you want me to add other bits and pieces to it. I've just noticed they've put a rifle stance on this guy holding a pistol. That seems a bit wrong. So we can shoot this guy, and then at some point he does drop to the floor and dies. We've got these little boost pads which give you a bit of a nudge up. You've got the original physics cubes, which were blue, but now are this nice sort of hazard yellow-orange kind of thing. Obviously, we've got the original gun, and it's now like a grenade launcher. Well, it's not a grenade launcher, but or it's a giant BB gun or airsoft gun, whatever you want. But it's only got a couple of rounds. And that's pretty much it, to be honest. So you've got these nice little these boosters. There's quite a lot of new stuff, which is good. And obviously, if we go then behind the scenes, we can see a little bit more stuff. But I'm not going to do that in this video. So the Unreal 6 is probably open now. So if we go to games, you can see we've got some slight differences here. So first person. So the first person template, like I said, it comes with different variants. So if you just open up this first person, you just get a camera in somebody's face, and that's pretty much it. But it's only until that you start selecting these variants that you get the extra functionality. So we've got an arena shooter and we've got a survival horror. Now the survival horror sounds really good, but it is really good, but there's no actual functionality. It's sort of a spooky setup in a first-person scene, so they're really pushing the dynamic lighting. So it's a really dark environment with only a few lights highlighting the area. So it gives you kind of a spooky vibe, but that's pretty much the limits of it. The third person, now this is actually pretty neat because they've added some really good stuff to this. So the original variant is just you running around with a camera behind you, absolutely nothing. It's very similar to how the previous third person template was. Very limited in functionality. But the variants. So there's now a combat variant, which is hand-to-hand combat where you can actually punch. It's kind of an arena setup. I might run this one just before we finish the video. So yeah, it's like an arena. You run in and it's hand-to-hand combat. So you're punching. The AIs have sort of like a behavior tree. So there is actually AI in this one, which is good. There's a behavior tree set up where they'll sort of like be stood idling. And by the way, the status is actually written above the head. Yeah, we'll definitely come back to this one, so I might save the rest of this explanation until we're actually in it. But one of the other variants is a platformer. So this is kind of like a you run around and collect tokens and stuff like that. Very, very generic, but it's also a very popular sort of game style. So there's some very nice things in there for you to have a look at. And then we've got basically a 2D version of that, so a side scroller. So you look at your character and you can only move left to right, up and down. There's no sort of depth to it, if you will. So it's a fixed camera. The top down, again, they've really overhauled this. The actual top down movement system itself hasn't really changed that much, but the template and the things around it is really neat. So there's like a strategy where you can select, you can click and drag. To be honest, I should probably do an overview where I go into each one of these because they're all neat in their own way. But effectively, if you've ever played like StarCraft, for example, or Red Alert, which is a pretty old game now, to be honest, but it's from my younger days. Yeah, so it's a strategy game where you can select a group of troops and you can move them to an area to do a task or something like that. They've sort of replicated that kind of idea. So you can select a troop, tell it where to move, select multiple troops, tell them where to move as a collective. And obviously, what they've done is when one troop meets up with another troop, they sort of do like a happy dance, which is quite interesting. It's almost like an Easter egg kind of thing. I wasn't expecting that to happen, but it's pretty neat. Twin stick shooter. So this is styled towards using one stick to move and the other stick to aim. And it's kind of, well, in this top-down scenario, you've got lots of enemies coming in. It's kind of like an arena. Lots of enemies flood in towards the center or on to you, and as you attack them, you're gaining a score. The interesting thing in this one is that they've added like a score multiplier. So if you kill a lot of enemies in a short period of time, your multiplier goes up, so your score increases obviously at a multiplied rate. They've added some bombs which explode, so it uses that Niagara effects. So they've all of these templates collectively have something slightly different, but equally all of them have something to learn, which I think is neat. Or like I said, there's an explosion effect in this. It uses physics bodies in the so not jiggle physics. That's something different. But the targets in this first person here uses sort of physics to wobble around. There's all sorts of different things in each project that you should consider having a look at, which is really neat. And then the vehicle as well. The vehicle has now been changed as well. You've got an off-road, which gives you sort of like an all-terrain type map, and then a time trial, which is the race car one. They've done a slightly different. Let's see if I can find. Let's change this to version and scroll to the top. So there it is. Let's see if this loads up pretty quick. So in the vehicle template, now what they've done is they've given you kind of like a basic landscape, but it's deformed. It's got some depth to it. It's not just a flat plane anymore with a track on it. Again, they've stuck with the spline-based track, which is nice. But the landscape, they've actually cut a hole into it and made sort of like a tunnel. They've set up some checkpoints which have to be hit, and there is a start and finish line, obviously, but the start time starts the timer. The checkpoints are required. If you get to the end without all the checkpoints, the timer doesn't count. So, for any of you that have watched my racing, I wouldn't call it a series. Yeah, it is kind of a series. The racing videos that I've released, albeit very spaced and intermittent, most of what I cover in there is now in that template. Well, pretty much all of it. There's a timer, um, and it's all just there. So this is the area that you start in. It's just a big donut for you for you to drive around. But if we go to the time trial variant and open up the time trial map, what you'll see is you get this nice 3D this nice little track which sort of like goes below ground and then comes back and goes through the tunnel. These shapes that you can see are the checkpoints. So we start here, we drive around, we hit each of the checkpoints, and then it records the time. They've made some slight improvements to the car. It looks much meatier. Um, the functionality of the vehicle doesn't feel that different. I feel like they have improved the traction where you can't actually go around a corner at like 100 anymore. There's not really a drift or anything like that. That'd have been neat for them to include. Um, More so because recently I've had conversations with somebody that needs a drift system. If you're watching, you know who you are. Hi. So yeah, as we go around, we hit all these checkpoints, hopefully, and up in the top left you can see the timer, and voila, there you go. You've got your best time per lap, which is really neat because all of this stuff is sort of things that you would expect from a race template, and it's all kind of here waiting for you now. So I mentioned about the melee one. Let me just quickly open up the combat one. There we go. And again, like I said, any of these templates, if anyone has played with them or has anyone got any questions, just sort of like how does this work, or um, I'd like to add bits and pieces to them. Um, I'm totally up for that. Just leave me a comment or message me on Discord. Link for Discord will be down below, and we'll look into it somewhat together, I guess. I've not been through every aspect of all of these projects yet, but I intend to go through them more in detail. But obviously, if I can focus on what some people need and want, then obviously that'll prioritize my focus on them bits. So what I've done is I've loaded up the third person. So I tell you what, let's just jump straight into it. The arena's slightly changed. So here we go. So we're now in this third person template. So we've got what feels to be like a bit of camera lag, which keeps the view looking slightly fresh. We can punch, we can hit one of these wobblers, we've got a health bar. So there are a few things that are different. We can punch away. We can hold and do a long swing like that. Let's run up here. So, first things first, we need to bash through this arena. And you can see there must be a bit of camera shake there when we're hitting it. A camera shake, some sparks. It really gives the sense of power behind this punch. And then when we run over, you can see now we've got an AI character. So obviously it's an enemy. The health bar has been styled in red, which obviously gives us the indication that it's an enemy. But you can also see next to it says idling. Now when I drop into the arena, it's now pursuing me. So now it's coming to attack. Now it's interesting that its status actually remains over there. I think that's quite interesting. He's kind of just stood there, so he's attacking. So let's go and whack him now. Let's try at least. So idling, launched. I'm trying to read the... there you go, so he's dead. There we go. So this guy's now flanking, attacking. Oh, now I've got two. So... Oh, there's actually combos I've just noticed. I didn't notice that when I had a playthrough earlier. So if I click, click, click... Oh, that is that's pretty neat. So there's actually a melee combat. Nice. So punch, punch, sort of like a slightly different jab, punch, punch, and then a round kick. Whoa. I'm easily impressed, by the way. You know, for this to be in a template, I'm actually quite happy for. So, the fact is that there's actually sort of a melee template is also really neat because me personally, I've always found that setting up melee sort of systems from scratch has been a real headache. So like a shooter's really simple, you know, you just put a model in the guy's hand, put a line trace or a projectile of some sort, which is just another actor, send it going. But melee, there's a bit more involved in it. Do you want the whole blocky system of my arms are giant sort of batons which just hit everything, or do we actually want it so when it lands on the person's body that it sort of counts, or do I just hit the gap between the arm and the body, but it still registers because that's where the hitbox? Anyway, it's always been a nightmare. So the fact that they've given you something by default for me is really good. So now at this point, I feel like I'm just going to be rambling on. I'm going to probably spend a few hours in this template making some tweaks, which I think would be nice, and just really breaking down each system and how they've implemented it. And maybe I'll sort of try and transfer some of the knowledge from here into separate videos, just to break each bit down. Um, One of the things that I'm probably going to regret saying this, but one of the things that I'm looking to do first on this system, especially, is when we grab this rifle, the actual model that they've got is nice in my opinion. It's nice and clean, but I want to be able to aim down sight. I really want to bring the gun up so it lines up um, with the crosshair, and we've got an aim down sight. I'm gonna try and do that. Now, I'll be honest, I've really slept on the new blend. What do they call it? The animation blending. I've not looked at it. I've started. You can tell by my tabs. I've started to look at how they've pieced this together and how they're kind of doing it. The nice thing is that they've got some animations here which seem to suggest that they've got aim down sight animations. I'm going to try and break it down and I'm going to try and incorporate it and add a name down sight to this. Then we'll try and swap out the model for a more interesting model, and we can see if we can sort of piece together something slightly more interesting. However, if I get a lot of messages for other things, or if people take interest in other aspects of any of these templates, I can easily shift my focus. I'm very much like Putty. I can move around and be morphed into anything. I'm pretty open to working on anything. Just let me know. Feel free to message me on Discord, like I said, or leave a comment. Discord's usually an easier way to get hold of me, because I'm a bit more responsive to Discord. Sometimes YouTube, you can leave a comment and it'll only tell me 8 hours later that you've commented, which is really annoying. So yeah, if you want more direct response, Discord's definitely the thing. Anyway, I'm rabbiting on now. I'm just talking rubbish. So thanks for watching. If you need anything, comment or message me, and I will see you in a future video. Thanks for watching. Bye.